Hey guys, we are live, and we just finished watching the Tucker Putin interview. And if you're wondering why we're dressed like this, just because we're being silly, we're just being
Yeah, we,
funny.
we,
So
we're just bored. We actually we don't have a reason to be dressed this silly.
yeah, we decided, you know what, let's just be obnoxious tonight.
It's okay to be a little bit obnoxious.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, like we watched the epic interview with Tucker and he who should not be named. Okay.
Yes,
Well,
Mr.
Putin. Oh no! Oh no! I named the name. Oh no! The world's gonna end. Yeah.
So, I let's do a quick recap.
Today we got an
I heard that.
Yeah. Sorry. That was an accident.
It was a 2-hour, 17-minute interview.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it was too short, to be honest.
I feel like they could have done 5 hours, honestly, but I hope they do another one. He's still in Russia, You fly all the way to Russia just to do a 2-hour interview. You would think that you would get a little more. But I think Putin managed himself pretty well, I will say.
Yeah. I think for example, the translator that we heard, that's like post interview, because I speak both languages, and I could tell when the translator is translating way ahead of time, and way before Putin even finishes his sentence, the translator's already saying what Putin's going to say in Russian.
Mm-hmm.
And so I realized that's that's probably the post edit translation, right? And so I had a feeling that maybe once in a while they had a different translator when they had the actual conversation together.
I would believe that. It seemed like...
Yeah.
I mean...
Because there are certain parts of it I'm thinking, yeah, I think Putin's kind of not getting near the end. It felt like Putin he's getting the information but not the whole picture, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it probably had to do with something with the translators during the actual interview, right? And then Putin just gave the answer that he gave, right? Because based on the information that he received, and that's the thing about translations. It's just so. It's you gotta be very skilled, especially when interviewing when you conducting interviews like these. And I've translated before, and it's crazy, because you have to straight up, think of what word to say, what word to use properly. And well, it's interesting. Putin kind of used some vulgarity in this interview, by the way.
Oh, he did?
Well, basically compared to all of his other foreign interviews, I'd say this is the one where he kind of was a little bit more kind of, I mean, still professional demeanor, but, a few vulgarities, here and there. For example, the translator translated, literally, if I was actually going to literally translate what Putin said, I would have translated like this, the hell if I know. He literally said that. Putin literally said, well, the hell if I know. He literally said that. But the translator, post editing, right, post the interview, the translator says, hell knows. And I'm thinking, hell knows, the kind of, that might be just a plural version of hell no,
Mm-hmm.
But I think the message got across, but I guess now what Putin literally said though. So in Russia, Russians don't say hell knows. Sorry, Russians don't say hell if I know. Russians will say the horseradish knows. Хрен его знает. Right. That's so. Yes. So basically, now here's the thing. You might think horseradish, it's nothing. It's something fairly innocent. It's not vulgar, right? And so that's true, but at the same time, it's been used as a replacement for male genitalia, right? For example, you probably heard people say you don't know dick, right? Yeah. So So but in English we don't say the dick if I know, right? We don't say that, right? and we don't say, the dick knows, right? We don't say it like that. Like, but in Russia, like literally, like they say the horseradish knows, right? And it's kind of like it just horseradish is being just a vulgar substitute for male genitalia, right?
I did not know.
So basically, like when you're just eating food and you say, "Oh, can you please pass the horseradish?" People know what you're talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you're like just in a certain context, hey, like you're flirting with some chick, right? Like you want to get down and dirty with your wife or girlfriend, and be like, "Hey, baby, want to see my horseradish?" so Putin basically, I'm saying. So I'm saying, like, well, the horseradish knows, right? Like that could be translated if you're trying to do a proper translation. Putin is saying, "The hell if I know."
Yeah. I'm gonna have to use that one.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, this interview is where Putin literally, I felt, was more, I don't know, like just like more manly, you could say.
Yeah, that would be a good way to put it. Overall,
yeah.
I did enjoy the interview, though.
Yeah.
You could tell Tucker was very used to the Western form of dialogue, where it's a give and take. Putin was the one in charge of the discussion, and you could tell. And it kind of frustrated Tucker a few times. But,
yeah, because Tucker is used to kind of, being in charge.
Yeah, but that being said, I know it did bother Tucker a few times when Putin opened up with a history of Russia, and he gave, it was like a 30-minute history of Russia, right?
Yeah, it was literally 30 minutes just explaining the history, like the origins.
Mm-hmm.
And like now if he wants to go further, he'd go further to the origins of the Rus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but he started off with the basics. He started off with the with the Russian state, 882 AD, right?
Yep.
And so like the 9th century basically. And of course, people say, "Oh, this is where Russia's history begins." Well, technically, it goes further back to like 500 AD, right? If you want to talk about the Eastern Slavs and the Western Slavs and Southern Slavs, right? And then around 600, 700, like the Rus start to kind of become more defined as Rus, right? And then in the 9th century, the actual unified Russian state is formed.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because all the tribes realize we're constantly murdering each other, typical Slavic behavior, right? Right. No, but seriously, I'm trying to put this in layman's terms, right? But basically, that's what
always kill each other. It's
just
what we do.
But that's literally what they have concluded. Hey, we're constantly at war, right? We're murdering each other. There's no peace in the land, there's no justice, right? There's because when you have this constant situation, there's going to be injustices everywhere. In a sense, going to suffer, right? So they said we need a ruler, and they realized, well, we can't pick someone from a smaller tribe because then he'll just constantly be biased towards his tribe, right? And then you can't pick someone from the biggest tribe because basically that again it will be just the dominance of the biggest tribe, right? So they decided, well, let's get like an outsider. Right, Rurik the Viking. Although, there's some theories that he was not like a true outsider. Like he was just basically a Slavic Varangian, a Russian Viking who was living in Norway or Sweden somewhere in that area. So there's that theory that he was also a Rus, but he just kind of separated himself from his people because he was too busy being a Varangian, right? So there's that theory that Rurik was also still Russian. But then there's the mainstream theory that he was a actual Norwegian, Swedish, whatever he was. I think Swedish. I'm not sure. Or probably Norwegian. Doesn't matter. They're all Scandinavians. But
yeah, they were kind of the same.
Yeah.
pre-Nordic
Yeah.
national genesis. They were all kind
Yeah,
of
so basically, like Putin just starts off with that history in the ninth century, right there.
which I think that was honestly a brilliant move on his part. A lot of Americans, and you'll agree with me on this, a lot of Americans and Westerners have this kind of idea where if I don't know about it, it's not important. And the founding history of Russia is incredibly important to the key topic him and Carlson talked about, which was the whole war in Ukraine. And it was very, very intelligent of him to open up with explaining the history of Russia because that includes the history of Ukraine, which begins a lot later than the history of Russia.
Exactly. And I was actually like really glad that Putin started off that way.
That
And
was brilliant.
I posted on a different social media account saying, "Hey, Putin is giving Tucker the anti-communist version of Russian history." And when I say the anti-communist version, I'm talking about like basically like post 1917,
Hmm.
right? When Ukraine was formed. I'm like, yes.
Yeah, and he gave a
Yeah.
very,
Well,
very
well. To
good.
be fair, like the communist version of history also is basically this idea that the Ukrainians were a brotherly nation, but a separate nation. That's the
Hmm.
communist version. And sorry, Ukrainian nationalists. Sorry, I hurt your feelings, but that's how it is. Sorry, you guys are a bunch of commies.
You're
Yeah.
not wrong. Unfortunately, you're not wrong. They're founding the founding of the Ukrainian country, and I'm pretty sure we've talked about this before, was Lenin and the Bolsheviks. They used it for anti-czarist sentiment and to weaken centralized power of the czar, etc., etc. And Putin talks about that too. He
Oh
doesn't
yeah.
go into detail about it, but he does mention that.
Exactly. And so basically, like he actually goes after both Lenin and Stalin very briefly,
Hmm.
but he just like craps on them, basically.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Um, Especially when he says, like Lenin just decided to just for some reason just to create this Ukrainian Soviet state. Yeah. Yeah, and he mentions Novorossiya. Like, yeah,
He
Novorossiya
does.
was in existence. For example, in the 1920s, in the early 1920s, when the USSR was forming and when Ukraine was basically joining the USSR, basically this is all post Civil War. And when Ukraine is joining the USSR, guess what? A journalist gets arrested because he's offended. So he lives in Odessa. And Odessa today is a very huge Russian speaking city, despite being in the southwest. It's a huge Russian language city. And this journalist, he's writing in this newspaper, he's asking the question, wait a minute, why are we being forced to become Ukraine? Like, I never heard, like, we were never Ukraine. Like, what is this Ukraine that the new government is talking about? This whole region is called Novorossiya, right? And
Hmm.
that journalist got put away, locked away by the Soviet regime. So
Oh, painful.
yeah, but like the dumbest counter argument to to me that I'll face is the whole Holodomor. That's literally the only counter argument that any pro Ukraine will ever have. You know,
I
it's
can
like
understand. I can understand their. I'm trying to think of a word. Unhappiness does not begin to describe. I can understand being mad about something like that. I'm not one of the type of people who's willingly.
the six guerrillian Ukrainians. It was
But
six guerrillion Ukrainians died in the Holodomor.
they still owe me for Volin, okay? And they still owe the Poles, and I'm the last person to vouch for the Poles, but they still owe the Poles for Volin. So, like, I get it. I understand why they're unhappy about it. It is an unfortunate thing, right? Whether one is pro Stalin or anti Stalin, the Holodomor is a very unfortunate event.
Yeah.
No matter how you cut the cake. That being said, they're still Russian.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
it's it's like
yeah.
Mormons. Well, actually, Mormons are far more separate from the American identity than Ukrainians are the Russian identity. Um, I don't have a good analogy, but they can't just be mad and try a national divorce. Because actually, I did notice Putin mentioned, and I've said this before, that the war with Ukraine is in many ways kind of just a civil war. And Putin actually mentioned that. I'm quite what's the word? Not happy, but like it's nice to hear him put it that way, because it kind of vindicates the takes I've been having.
Yeah, well, exactly. I've been telling people this is simply the continuation of the Russian Civil War because officially the Russian Civil War never really had a true ending. Um, Basically, you had like this 1922 final attempt in Vladivostok, then like they surrender in 1922.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's that 500 uprising in 1923. So for me, like I usually say that the Civil War officially ended in 1923, and there are some sources that also agree that 1923, I guess, could count as the official end of the Civil War, but in the sense that there is like no White Guard uprising, right? But there was like no Appomattox, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
there was like no true Appomattox, right? And so like the White Guards, we had to realize that like they were divided because of the front lines, and they had multiple governments that were formed. The governments of Admiral Kolchak, the government of General Denikin. Then later it'll be the governor of Baron Wrangel in Crimea, right? And so like basically, in case one of those governments fell, right, they could continue the war against the Reds, and and like the Baron Wrangel and his soldiers, they're like the last actual like legitimate government power from Russia. The Vladivostok guys, they rebelled against the Reds for 1 year, but were they officially the legitimate power? I'm not sure, but there was like no Russian version of Appomattox,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so technically, the war just took a pause. And during World War II, the White Guards had like a split. Majority of White Guards either stayed neutral or they resisted the Germans in World War II, and a small portion joined the Germans during World War II, and so you had that part. So you could say that the White Guards had like a temporary truce with the Reds during the Second World War,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like this unofficial temporary truce. By the way, two Orthodox monarchists, they fought in the French Resistance, and here's the thing: they're both allowed to peacefully to return to the USSR, and they just went back and retired in the USSR, died of old age, natural causes, and boom, everything was fine with them. And so, yeah, but the Russian Civil War never really ended, and I would say the uprising in the Donbass region in Ukraine was literally the pause is over.
Yeah.
And because here's the thing, Russian monarchists, no, that is Russia. That is Russia. Russian monarchists, Russian nationalists, Russian fascists, and Russian Natsocks. They all know that is Russia, right? And so just real quick, just when the Maidan coup happened, right? All bets were off, right? So there's no more legitimate government in Ukraine, right? And so you have basically the whole Crimea situation. You have the Lugansk, Donetsk, Kharkiv, Odessa uprisings. Oh, the Dnieper uprisings. You had uprisings halfway around the country. Just the Donetsk and Lugansk guys They're just lucky that they're able to continue their uprisings for 8 years in a row. And so, because the Kharkiv guys, they failed for multiple reasons. But what's interesting is that originally, I know some artard is going to say, oh, well, Donetsk people, they got a bunch of lefties there. Well, no. Originally, a lot of the uprisings, especially the whole revival of Novorossiya, those are all monarchists, like literal monarchists. And some of those monarchists were involved in certain Nazi activities in Russia, like in the 1990s.
And
Right.
if anyone would like to read a book that kind of has the on-the-ground reports of the civil war in Ukraine, look up 85 Days in Slavyansk. It's published by Antelope Hill Publishing. They also have published works from the Ukrainian side of the war, and I believe 85 Days in Slavyansk has reports from both sides. I've heard it's a very, very, very good report of the Ukrainian civil war and how that segued into the Crimea crisis.
Yeah, like for normies, we could call it the Ukrainian Civil War, but technically what happened in Donbass was simply just a continuation of the Russian Civil War, because here's the thing. The Ukrainian Republic that was formed during the Russian Civil War, there were two Ukrainian republics. Well, technically three. The first one was kind of like a German puppet state, and it got destroyed by the Ukrainian nationalists, who simultaneously were communists. They were exactly like the Bolsheviks. But then those Ukrainian nationalists, they kind of had a split because one faction said, hey, we must stick with the Russian communists, right? And the other faction said, no, we're commies, but we must have our own separate Ukraine. And here's the thing. Their own borders that they like originally tried to claim as Ukraine were only like a few regions. Just and here's the thing. I'm not trying to parrot Putin, but basically Putin, he's right when he says, yeah, like the original Ukraine that was formed, like even like in the chaos, like between the Russian Civil War and post Civil War, right? Originally it was just a few regions, and so basically, so you have the Second Republic, the Second Ukrainian Republic. It has a split. And so, like the pro-Russian faction kind of basically takes over Kharkiv, a Russian city, by the way, and then the pro-separate Ukrainian faction, they kind of stay in Kiev for a little bit, and then they get driven out by the Red Guards, but then those guys get driven out by the German puppet state. It's so weird, right? And so
I did enjoy that. Sorry to interrupt. I did enjoy that he brought up Stepan Bandera.
Yeah, but that's a post. That's World War II Germans. I'm talking about like the First World War Germans.
Oh, First World War.
Yeah. I'm talking about the First World War Germans. And so, because during the First World War, Germans thought they could have this puppet state, right? But then they realized, hey, we're losing on the Western Front. We need all of our troops ASAP on the Western Front. So they abandoned that whole Ukraine project. And so, Hetman Skoropadsky, the puppet leader, he escaped with the Germans. It's so sad because he used to be a Tsarist officer. He was a general in the Tsar's army. And so, anyways, but the thing is, so you have this Ukrainian Republic, right? And so the original Ukrainian Republic, the second Ukrainian Republic that took over after Hetman Skoropadsky, they kind of had this split. And here's the thing: both sides were commies. It's just that one side wanted kind of like a nationalist state on its own, and the other side wanted kind of, Ukrainian nationalism, but under Russia. But they're all commies anyway, right? And so the White Guards, they fought against all commies, right? Russian commies, Ukrainian commies, Ukrainian nationalists. The White Guard. Yeah, so the White Guards fought against the Ukrainian Republic as well. And like I said, and so then the Ukrainian Republic, when they have the split, the ones that splintered off, they became the Soviet Ukrainian Republic, right? And so,
very interesting, actually, it just occurred to me, is how he mentioned almost everything he talked about was Ukraine, and then he gave the hint about how Lithuania.
So wait. So I just realized you took off your mask.
Oh, I've had it off for the past
Yeah,
20
yeah. So
minutes.
I'm gonna take it off for like mine off as well. Yeah. So yeah, keep talking.
How he mentioned, Lithuania used to be a principality under Russian rule too. Um, I feel like he said that for a reason.
Wait, I'm sorry. Can you
But
repeat that again?
he mentioned that Lithuania was a Russian principality.
Oh yes, there was for a brief moment in history the Russian Lithuania Duchy, and it was
Yes.
mostly a Russian area.
hmm and he mentioned that like very it was like he's talking full stop. By the way, Lithuania was a Russian principality. Back to what he was saying, it was one of those where it's like, hmm, interesting.
Wait. You're saying you did not know that?
I'm sure I knew that, but it seemed like what I'm saying is it seemed like something that was kind of out of the blue, if you get me.
Hmm.
Like, yeah, you could know that, but he was talking about Ukraine, which Russia's at war with, taking land from, and he's like, Ukraine, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
Lithuania, and it just
Lithuania.
goes back to Ukraine. It's like, whoa,
Yeah. Well, if you want to get super deep into that, uh, so right next to Lithuania you have Estonia,
hmm
and historically speaking, the capital of Estonia, Tallinn, used to be called Revel.
mm.
And then before that, it had a Russian name. It used to be a Russian city, like many years ago, like in a couple, I don't know, in the Middle Ages.
Yeah, the Baltic
Yeah.
countries have long, if I remember right, don't quote me on this, but they have longer history as Russian provinces than they have as independent provinces.
Well,
Um,
if you're talking about the Russian Empire, that's like a different situation. But
Being just under control of the Rus.
well, in the medieval era, in the medieval era, like I guess like in the Middle Ages, the Russians actually probably like dominated more of the Baltic areas than the actual Balts themselves.
I
Yeah.
actually think, ooh,
And plus, you probably heard of the term like Slavo Balts or Slav Balts, Slavic
yeah,
Balts. Yeah.
all of my Crusade books are on the Southern Crusades, and I don't really have any on the Northern Crusades, so can't
The
look it
Great
up.
Northern Crusade, when the German knights, the German papists, tried to convert the pagans in the north, but
We're
again,
not
like
starting
but the other pagans were the Orthodox Christians in
we're not
Novgorod.
starting that fight today.
Don't worry, don't worry. We'll continue this conversation later.
Yes, but you do have a point. Balto-Slavic was used like a lot, and that was kind of it was used as like almost like not the same because Balts are a unique ethnic group, but it's almost kind of like Southern Slav. If for those who are familiar or not familiar with the Slavic founding story,
Balts are more in the north.
Balts are in the north, yeah. For those who are not familiar with the Slavic founding story, there were three brothers. Here's the story goes: there were three brothers in a great tribe of Slavs, Czech, Lech, and Rus. And Lech went south, became the Southern Slavs or the Yugoslavs. Rus went east and became the
Rus,
Rusinski
yeah.
people. And then Czech went west and became the Czechs. That's
So
it. The
so
Poles
what
were
happened to
vile
Paul?
goblins.
The-
Vile goblins. Um, so I don't own them. So it's kind of like those larger ethnic groups. Balto Slavs were considered that for a very long period of time. Just a generally large ethnic group where there was enough homogeneity to where reasonably one could group them together. And that's not to say that they're like the same people because Latvians, Lithuanians, and Estonians,
yeah,
I want to slap them
yeah.
all. But like, yes, you people are a unique group, all 25 of you, but you guys got bunched in with us for most of history.
But yeah, but anyways, but going back, so like the Russian Civil War, like if we're going back to the Russian Civil War, right? it never truly ended. Like they never had their Appomattox moment, and
Mhm.
but still, the Ukrainian Republic, which was commie, which it was kind of both. It was simultaneously like basically communist, but simultaneously nationalistic, right?
Mhm.
But it's a false nationalism. It's a nationalism, like that was basically taught to them by Polish aristocrats, by the way.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I
Sorry.
love like, and I loved how Putin was literally just constantly talking about the Poles like early on,
I love
and I'm thinking,
sorry.
yeah, like literally,
Say it.
bravo, finally, like here's the thing, finally Americans will learn some actual like history, and it's from none other than Putin himself.
Yeah, and I talked with Mama, not a spy, who also watched the interview, and she was like, "Wow, this is like real. I really enjoy that he spent like a half an hour just to explain the history of it."
Hmm.
Like
Yeah,
she really, and I kind of use my family as like a normie litmus test, right?
yeah.
She really, really enjoyed the whole explanation of it all by Putin. Like, I feel as though a lot of Americans will, because it's very, and I know you've come across this too, it's very common when you're talking with Americans, if like take for example the Nagorno-Karabakh war, right? Because that one's pretty apolitical these days and we can talk about it without things getting too spicy. If someone's like, your normie friend is like, "Oh, what's this whole thing about?" You're like, "Okay, sit down, this goes back 1,000 years." They're like, "Oh, I didn't even know this much history existed towards this small thing." They think that same way towards like the Russian and Ukrainian war. They look at it, their immediate reaction is like, why do people have to kill each other? Which I understand your average person cares more about football than geopolitics, right? But it was very nice for Putin because this is a huge event. Carlson interviewing Putin. The fact that he opened up explaining the history of the situation is immense. It is, I cannot understate it. Like, it is immense. It is of immense importance.
Yeah. Well, that's why it's also very important to just realize this is simply a continuation of the Russian Civil War because
Mhm.
the White Guards they fought against both the actual like commies and then the nationalistic commies,
Mhm.
right? The nationalistic commies being the Ukrainians, the Petluras, the Petlurites. So before Bandera, there was Petlura, and people forget about Simon Petlura. But Simon Petlura, he was like the leader of the Ukrainian Republic, and the thing is, the White Guards fought against them too, so they're enemies. And so when the whole Maidan coup situation happens in 2014, there's basically like rebellions against this coup in 2014 all over the country, basically. And Donetsk and Lugansk they continue, and they're reviving the Novorossiyan project. And guess what? So by doing that, they basically restarted they basically unfroze the Russian Civil War and continued. And although the Russian monarchists and other Russian nationalists were fighting against Ukraine, right? But historically, they're also the enemies of the White Guard. So yes, they're not fighting against actual, commies, but
Mhm.
they're fighting against like the allies of the commies, by the way. And
Mhm.
so yeah, and so basically, like Ukraine as it is, by the way, and I love how Putin reminded everyone that like post-Soviet Union, the borders that like existed, before 2022, right? So like within that time frame between 1991 and 2022, like the borders of Ukraine and Russia and Belarus and Moldova, these are all like borders created by the Soviet Union.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And that cannot be understated. One bit that cannot be understated. You have a country made by the Soviet Union with borders drawn by the Soviet Union. And if you're an American, a Russian nationalist, a German, whatever, if you have this a modicum of anti-Bolshevik sentiment, you should look at Ukraine and see it as a sort of geopolitical abomination.
Exactly. And so in 2014, that Russian Civil War got revived. It was back on, baby, right? And of course, eventually, like some of the like Russian commies, they join in the Donbass thing, right? They want to help the the Russian working class, and I'm thinking, shut up, dudes. Like you guys showed up late to the party, right? But you know how like leftists always got to infiltrate something, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No matter what you're doing,
Yeah.
there's going to be some level.
Yeah, but the Novorossiya project was started by monarchists, and unfortunately, the Donbass rebels they kind of became more centrist. So, and here's the thing: like the Russian White Guard was also a mixed bag of different political views. So you had monarchist military units, and then you had centrist military units. Then you had some lefty military units, right? So the White Guard itself, during the Russian Civil War originally in 1917. There were also a mixed bag of different political ideologies. And so in 2014, you kind of have like the monarchists, they start on their counter rebellion against Maidan in 2014. And then, of course, you have these other ideologues who join in for their own selfish reasons. And so here's the thing. And that with Russia joining the Donbass rebels in 2022, like I'm just thinking, wow, the Russian Civil War just escalated even further. It just got bigger. And so, yeah, this is still a civil war. Like, yeah, so this is basically the continuation of the Russian Civil War. So this time they're not fighting against communists. This time they're fighting against the Ukrainian Republic, which was temporarily the ally of the communists during that time period in 1917, 1918, 1920.
And if you want to get really, really, really esoteric, they still are communists because they're siding with.
Oh yeah, like let's remind people that well, not Zelensky himself, but let's just say the previous president prior to Zelensky, Poroshenko, the guy who was installed by Maidan. Poroshenko, he is the son of a Soviet official in Moldova. Right. Basically, currently, by the way, you know that area, that Transnistria, that pro-Russian separatist group in Moldova.
Yeah.
The Transnistria. Well, in the Soviet era, Poroshenko's father was basically in charge of that area in the Soviet time period, and Poroshenko, like he lived a life of luxury as the son of a communist leader, right? And like he would go overseas and like sneak in like alcohol and all that stuff from the West. Right? So like this guy was always living a life of luxury. He has nothing to do with the people. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and then for example, like Tagnybok, like the leader of the Ukraine's so-called nationalist party, Svoboda. You probably heard of them, Svoboda Party.
Yes.
By the way, what kind of nationalist group calls their party Liberty? Like Svoboda literally means like liberty, freedom. What kind of a person who claims to be a nationalist would name their political party with such a name? Seriously, bro. What liberty are you talking about? You're not a Republican.
Don't get me started. Don't get me started. I mean, it's very clear that we're talking about a predominantly liberal group with at least Marxist-influenced opinions.
Well, for example, Yatsenuk. Hold on, not Yatsenuk. I'm thinking about someone else actually. Or am I thinking? Oh, actually, Farion. So she's super duper anti-Russian. She'll refuse to speak Russian, right? And here's the thing, though. And so her anti-Russian sentiment grew even more during the whole Donbass conflict in 2014, and then of course right now she's off the rails. Like she's like basically supports like she's literally supporting genocide against Russian babies and against just Russian people in general. Like she'd be totally okay with that. But here's the thing, though. In 1988, when it was becoming less popular to be a communist in 1988. You know what she does? She joins the Communist Party. No, so here's the thing. So like I'm thinking, so you're a hardcore commie. Like you join right when everyone's like leaving and like becoming more independent or joining the LDPSU. No, you join the CPSU of all like of all parties you join, right? When like at a time when basically you could be whatever you want. No, you choose to be a communist, right? And like here's the thing. Like she makes the excuse, well, I had to kind of get into power. Shut up. If you're talking about the 60s, the 70s, the early 80s, yes, that makes sense.
Santa
Yeah.
Marin.
But 1988 with Gorbachev in power, no, 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 no. Like basically, like there's no need for that. Like it was obsolete. Like you could have been anything else, right?
That thought Santa
Yeah,
Marin
yeah,
who's just like, oh, I'm just in touch with my generation. That's why I'm a sick degenerate. No, you're just a sick degenerate.
yeah.
Toys around in the
You're just always a sick degenerate.
yeah.
Yeah, but what's funny, but what's funny is that like she basically joined the Communist Party when at a time when people were just saying, oh, it's no longer cool, that's just a boomer thing, right? she joins, right? And then like all of a sudden over the years, 20 years later, she's a super duper Ukrainian patriot who only wants to speak Ukrainian and never Russian.
That reminds me of a
Yeah.
song. It goes something like, "My name is Irving Crystal, and the fun has just begun." Have you heard that one?
No, I have not.
Comrade Trotsky would be proud to have been called a neocon. It's by oh, is it Kevin McDonald? He sings a song called the Neocon song, and he's playing a ukulele.
The
And
neocon
it's
song.
yeah. If you Google the Neocon song, it's it's funny, um, and it's like 3 minutes about him just poking fun at how neocons are actually just Trotskyists. It's really really good. You will laugh. You will laugh. It's
Yeah.
on YouTube.
Well, like, by the way, another, speaking of Ukrainians who are actually just commies, Turchinov. So, right before Poroshenko became president in 2014, they had a temporary, what's the other word? A provisional, because they overthrew the legitimate president, and so they installed a provisional president, Turchinov. So, Turchinov, prior to the whole Maidan thing, was always being pro-Ukrainian, constantly talking in Ukrainian, and he's a Baptist pastor too. Like literally, Turchinov, he's like Ukrainians were, well, not just Ukrainians, but Slavic Protestants were happy. Oh, look, we have a Baptist politician in Ukraine, right? And
Slavic Protestants should all just be beaten in the city square. I'm sorry, guys.
well, I used to be one, so like I escaped that.
Yes,
I escaped that fate.
I held that view.
Oh, you had that view when you first met me. This Slavic
Yeah.
Protestant, I want to beat
Oh,
the.
no,
Yeah.
no.
So
Now
anyways,
the roles have reversed. It's
yeah,
funny.
yeah. Now I want to take them to the square and be like, you traitors to the faith, you traitors to the true faith. so so anyways, Turchinov, he's the provisional president of Ukraine in 2014 before Poroshenko was elected, and so Turchinov, um, guess who he was in the Soviet era?
Ooh, ooh, ooh.
He was basically like the Soviets version of the HITLER youth. He was the leader of that.
Really?
Yeah. Like he would do the propaganda stuff for the youth in the Ukraine. So like he's promoting communism. He's promoting communist ideology. Then all of a sudden the Soviet Union disappears, and like all of a sudden he's just the super duper Ukrainian patriot. Shut up, dude.
These leftists are all the same. They flip the switch, and by leftists I mean there are a lot of right wingers, so-called right wingers, who are just as bad, and they're in the same boat. Where it's like, I remember before the war started, there were plenty of guys who were like, "Yeah, Russia is better than Ukraine. Ukraine's a crap hole. It's corrupt. It's run by unsavory people." the minute the war started and the switch was flipped, they went like, "Oh, dude, don't you get it? Ukraine's the only hope for nationalism." Like, no, no, it's not. 5 minutes ago, you were saying the opposite. What are you talking about?
Well, that's literally like a bunch of Russian nationalists who were angry at the Russian government for not changing overnight. So they went to Ukraine and created Azov Battalion.
Yes. Make a
Oh,
law blind them.
yeah, guys, a revelation. Ooh, Azov Battalion created by Russian nationalists.
Ugh.
Who knew?
Russian nationalists.
No, but
Anywho,
yeah,
back to the interview.
yeah. I mean, like, it wasn't just them. Of course, there were actual like citizens of Ukraine, but a lot of Russian
Yeah,
nationalists made up the bulk of Azov Battalion, and
yeah.
so
They were the exiles,
yeah,
basically.
yeah, well, they were just not happy that that the Putin government did not become what they wanted it to become, right? And so this one Russian nationalist who's on the front lines, he explained, yeah, unfortunately, like these impatient dudes, just wanted miracles to happen overnight, just where they were impatient and they went to the Ukrainian side, and
That's
so.
unfortunate.
Yeah, and so like the thing is, well, now he's on the front lines and he has to fight against them. So
hmm
yeah,
A lot of people don't realize things take time, years, even unfortunate as it is. Things just take time, and when they don't see that, like, oh, what I want is happening, it's not happening right now, so I'm mad. Like, no, calm down. Things take time. Just take a minute. Like, sit back, relax.
yeah,
It's
but
okay.
yeah. So like one of my things is that I'm just glad that Putin just labeled this a civil war, and
Yeah, yeah, that was a good move.
well, it was like a quick kind of like he'd not like go into to details about it, but I like that part.
hmm
And yeah, and so regarding the whole now World War II, like that topic, of course, many so-called right wingers here in America are going to flip out. Like first of all, here's the thing: Putin, you have to realize he's a baby boomer, right?
Oh, really?
And
Yeah, I think we've talked about that before, actually.
yeah, well, here's the thing: Putin is a boomer, obviously, right? And so he's going to have somewhat of a boomer attitude towards certain things. And
hmm
yeah, and so here's another thing that needs to be considered is that like basically every politician is going to speak out against a certain group during World War II. Every politician, so
Like,
like
I saw a
Even Zelensky, right? Like he's going to
yeah,
speak out against those people if he has to.
I saw a very good take today, actually, from someone who has sympathies and align with that group, and he said, like, who he said, who cares? That's just like a catch-all for bad guy these days.
Yeah,
You know, it really is. Like, guys, I'm sorry, that's just how the
yeah,
way of the world
yeah,
is. It's a catch-all for bad guy for people I don't like. So
yeah.
he's gonna say that.
Yeah,
It's just how it is.
and so here's another thing though, like regarding the so-called Ukrainian nationalists, and here's the thing: the reason why I say nationalists, or the whole quotation marks, is because Ukrainian nationalism is not really founded on any true history. Like, there's no true history behind it. I mean, like there is history behind it, but it's false. There is like no Ukrainian nation, and so. And unfortunately, the German Nazis during the Second World War, uh, they chose the wrong enemy to fight, and on top of that, they really did not go deep into the history of Russia, and they treated the Cossacks, like the Russian Cossacks, as a separate entity. They treated Russians and Ukrainians as separate, and what's interesting is that Putin, what he says is true. Yeah, Ukrainians, in German uniforms, they would massacre Russian and Polish populations.
Yes.
So, like that's
And
true.
enough. This is a little known for the people who are like, "Ugh, Ukraine's gonna save nationalism." They did it to such an extent. They massacred people to such an extent that they destabilized the Ukrainian region so much that Mr. Mustache had Stepan Bandera put in a concentration camp. Okay? Let me put that out.
To be fair, Mr. Mustache Man also did not like the fact that Stepan Bandera was declaring a free, independent Ukrainian state without consulting him first.
That too. Stepan Bandera was a Spurg. He was like the highest degree. He was a 34th degree Spurg. Okay, people? Let me put that out there. A 34th degree Spurg. My man was so bad, he got thrown in a camp. All right? Don't associate with that. That's not good.
Oh, by the way, let's not forget, he's so spurgy that when General Vlasov, by the way, Heinrich Himmler, he wanted General Vlasov and Bandera to actually talk because eventually, like near the end of the war, they realized, okay, we can't keep Stepan Bandera here. We need to kind of maybe release him for propaganda purposes. And so Vlasov and Bandera had that meeting together, arranged by Himmler. And Vlasov said, "Yeah, brother, what's up, Ukrainian brother? Yeah, let's unite together against the commies, right?" Well, what does Stepan Bandera do? Oh, no, we're not interested in uniting with the Muscovites. It's like, dude, are you serious right now?
Here, find a bust of Stepan Bandera and just go measure that skull, people. It's not going to sort out well.
Yeah, so, but Putin, like, he's right. Ukrainian so-called nationalists. I'm thinking, first of all, you're continuing the work of Vladimir Lenin, so, good job, nationalists. You guys are not really nationalists. you're basically, you're the children of communist Vladimir Lenin, who, by the way, just hated Russian people, and so that's why he separated the Russian people into three groups. The Russian Federation, the Ukrainian Soviet Republic, and the Belarusian Republic. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so it's true, and so that's why Putin and many World War II survivors, soldiers and civilians who are still alive, they remember the evil things that the so-called Ukrainian wannabe nationalists have done. Also, like for example. By the way, General Vlasov, his army was called the Russian Liberation Army in the Second World War. And what's interesting, despite the fact that it was called Russian Liberation Army, they had some interesting Soviets Internationale in his own army, right? It was kind of...
Don't the Ukrainians have a unit called the Russian Liberation Army, and they have the same...
Oh, well, we're not talking about today. We're talking about World War II, right?
Yeah.
No, it's called. The one today it's called Freedom for Russia, something like that. So, yeah, okay. but they're using the same flag.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. Well, which, by the way, Western journalists should look into. Because what's interesting is that despite the fact that Azov rebranded their Das Reich symbol. I'm thinking, the Freedom for Russia military unit, the flag with the blue cross.
Do you want? I think I have a canister of Ukropium.
Yeah.
Just see if I have some Ukropium. Oh, there's some.
So, anyways,
100% pure Ukropium.
No, but seriously, Vlasov, his army, despite the fact that it was called the Russian Liberation Army in the Second World War, he had some interesting internationale in it, and they had some Georgians, they had some guys who identified as Ukrainians in his unit, in his army,
and had some Azeris too.
Probably. But what's interesting, in Vlasov's army, there's also a Latvian officer, and so I forgot the Latvian officer's name. And so the reason why I bring him up, right, and this is kind of to confirm what Putin is saying about the Ukrainians, right? Although I'm talking about Latvians right now, but here's the thing. So this Latvian officer who was in Vlasov's army, he was kind of traveling through to get to a different location. I forgot why he was kind of traveling, but he stopped by at some village, and so because he's Latvian, he has not been in Latvia in a while, and he sees like an actual Latvian unit dressed in Waffen SS uniforms, and so he's happy to see his fellow Latvians, and on the side, like he notices like a bunch of dead civilian bodies just straight up like massacred, right? And so he's asking his fellow Latvians. He's asking them, "Oh, who did this? Like, who killed all these innocent civilians?" And they tell him, "We did." He's like, "What do you mean you did?" They say, "Yeah, we did it." And he's like, "But why? Why'd you kill these civilians?" And their response was, "Well, because they're Russians, And so, like he was horrified. Like he was like literally shocked. Wait a minute, like dang, like I thought we were fighting a common enemy. I thought we we're fighting against communists and a certain tribe, if you know what I mean, right? And so, like this Latvian was shocked that this happened, and incidents like these were very common, especially in Ukraine, when the so-called Ukrainian nationalists, they would murder their own people. They would raid their own people. And then, of course, you had the Bandera people who split away from the SS Galicia. They had their own miniature little infighting. And so, like, they would kill their own people. My great-grandmother, like, she lived through it. Like a bunch of Ukrainian so-called nationalists, they came into the village, started rounding up random people, shooting them in the head. Basically, they wanted to kill my great grandmother, but then one of the guys, when he was reloading, like his gun was not, it was just not reloading, so he's like messing with it, and then someone called him over to get something, and she ran off and locked the door in her house.
She walked backwards from the execution area out, basically.
And so, basically, she escaped from that. And my grandma, well, she's not alive anymore, but my grandma remembers this stuff, right? She remembers seeing all this crazy stuff too, right? And these were the so-called Ukrainian nationalists doing all this.
Here we go. Volyn massacre by Ukrainian nationalists. I just wanted to get the number. 100,000 Poles. That doesn't matter. 100
guerrillion Poles.
100,000 Poles. Nobody cares about that. 340 Czechs. Okay, that is bad. That is terrible, and that should be stopped. Okay?
Yes. Yes. The Czech people will be avenged.
Nobody cares about the Poles, but
yeah. 100 guerrillion Poles in the Volyn massacre.
But those are the numbers, and that's just one event. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
They were horrendous in the things that they did historically. And it wasn't just against the Poles and Czechs that they did that too.
Well, a certain tribe that should not be named.
I just put a full stop there. You can, fill in the blanks with whatever you want.
Yeah, but basically, they also massacred like Russians too, and they massacred their own people. They massacred fellow Ukrainians too over the slightest little accusation or something.
Yep. And it was quite good of us to bring that up.
And by the way, whenever people tell me, the Ukrainian people greeted the Germans, well, first of all, no. Like the Ukrainian Soviet Republic, Kiev did not really greet the Germans. Like Kharkiv did not greet the Germans. Odessa, Crimea did not greet the Germans. Right? Like it was mostly like in Western Ukraine, but for different reasons, and it just gets all confusing. But Putin, he was right. He's saying all this stuff happened, and so you have people alive today, even veterans in Ukraine. By the way, like veterans in Ukraine, like they don't like the so-called nationalists in Ukraine because they're thinking, wait a minute. Like, I remember those symbols, and like those symbols murdered my parents. That's why I joined the Red Army, to avenge them, And by the way, ironically, a lot of Ukrainian soldiers, they don't like those people with those symbols too, because a lot of Ukrainian soldiers, the way they see this whole war is a continuation of what their grandparents did in the Red Army. So a lot of Ukrainian soldiers, like, they believe, okay, my grandfather fought against the German Nazis, and today I'm fighting against the Russian fascists, right? And so, like, a lot of the Ukrainian military, they themselves don't like the Azov, the Idar, the blacks, the right sector, right? Like, they don't like those guys at all. Yeah, and so
No, they're anti-socials. They're
yeah,
anti-social.
and so, like, yeah, if Putin, so when Putin says he wants to denazify Ukraine, well, I mean, and plus, the so-called Ukrainian nationalists, so they're not really nationalists. They're controlled by a certain tribal members. Like, they're being financed by certain tribal members too.
Hmm.
And, like, we shall not name their names, but we know who they are.
The Swedes.
Yes, the Swedes, of course. Of course, it's the Swedes. Kolomoisky's a real Swede.
He did talk about. I did quite like this. He mentioned the Russia and China, the new Sino. I was going to say Sino-Soviet, the new Sino-Rus alliance, becoming stronger, and how the Europeans should not really be worried about it. They should be worried about Chinese investments in Europe, which is a huge thing that people don't realize is what's happening. Predatory investments. Are you familiar with that?
Oh, no.
So this is a big thing. Greece, I don't think so much Turkey, but Greece, Germany, England, France, the more Western countries. So are you familiar with the Chinese investments in Africa?
Well, I heard something about that. Like, yeah, well, I heard that, like Chinese are buying up certain factories or certain industry in Africa.
So what they do most of the time is these Chinese corporations will build, take for example, like, we'll just say a shipyard, right? They'll build a shipyard or a railroad, because this one actually happened in the Congo. They'll build a railroad, right, going from point A to point B with X amount of infrastructure, and they'll say, you have 15 years to pay this off. And they'll put such an aggressive interest payment on it where that small country can't help but not pay it off. And if they default on the payment, which happens faster than 15 or 20 or whatever the years are, then what will happen is, as per the agreement, it becomes property of the PRC. They're doing that in Albania, in Greece, building shipyards, where they say, like, yeah, we'll build a shipyard at a really good rate, but it will have a 35% interest rate annually. And that country cannot pay it off within the time frame that it would be repossessed. And so I believe they're doing the same thing in Europe, in Africa, and across the Indian and Asian oceans. It's called the string of pearls strategy. Like, one is sowing pearls across the ocean, right? So they're setting up ports, trade centers, railroads all over. And the Europeans, particularly the European Union, because European nationalists would never fall for something like that, but the European Union, being in such awful economic status, is falling for it. And they are selling their souls to China. And Putin kind of brought that up, and he mentioned how China is he didn't mention the string of pearls strategy, but if someone is like, oh my god, I didn't know that Europe had so much Chinese money in it, look into that. He kind of hinted at it, which I thought was quite a nice thing to bring up.
Yeah, like, I remember, well, Putin, like, said, "Oh, that's just all boogeyman stuff," you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The Eurasianism thing is nonsense. It's schizophrenic and nonsense, and I've said that for years.
yeah. Well, like, it's a crappy Dukenism stuff. Yeah, it's just
No,
cringe.
nobody. We have to do an episode on Dugan. Nobody takes him seriously.
Yeah, yeah. You know who else does not take him seriously? Putin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
when was the last time you heard of Dugan? He wrote a book. Yeah, it's about geopolitics.
Yes, I could write a book about my opinion on geopolitics too.
Yeah, Stalin wrote a cookbook. What is the world ending if I bake like black bread? Come on, people. Like, become
Yeah.
reasonable here.
Yeah, well, here, yeah, like, oh, hey, Stalin wrote books, read some of Stalin's books.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I actually would recommend. I got a collection of Lenin's writings, and
okay.
I'm really looking forward to reading them to understand his his
So,
thought.
so you could watch and learn.
Yeah, people, don't be afraid of books. Learn
Well,
your opponent's ways.
yeah. Will he mention how the Germans financed his way through into Russia?
I actually think I do have one on that. I
Yeah.
got so I got State and Revolution, Left Wing Communism and Infantile Disorder. Such an interesting title. And What is to be Done? The Burning Question. I believe in What is to be Done, he talks about gathering international support. I digress. I'm looking forward to reading those. Yes, I'm close to a third bookshelf. I will probably hit a third one in the year because that one is almost completely filled up. But yes,
Yeah.
do read, people. Do read. I say it every live stream episode, but please read.
Yeah. But basically, yeah, like Putin, like where were we at? We were at Putin in China, right? Well, like,
Yeah, Putin
yeah.
and
Well, actually, no, not Putin. Sorry, I meant Tucker. Like
Tucker.
Tucker, yeah. So Tucker, I don't know if he was going to be. I don't know if he's able to be safely to come home. Because I feel sorry for him. I'm thinking, what if he gets arrested?
I don't think he'll be arrested
well,
in the United States, but I have heard, again.
but he will be sanctioned. He is sanctioned by the EU.
Oh, I believe it. Well, he's on the Ukrainian kill list now.
Yes, the Mirotvorets website. Yes,
He's
but by the way, Mirotvorets means peacemaker. I'm thinking, okay, well, so much for peace.
I don't know if this is true. I've heard Tucker has been building a very nice, very secure house. I'm talking Makarov and Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 level safe house.
Oh wow.
Somewhere. Yes, from what I've heard. So I'm sure he will be fine, but definitely.
Are you saying that Tucker is our Makarov?
Unfortunately, he's not a czarist, so no.
Oh, okay, yeah, we don't want him. Yeah.
Again, apologies. I'm still recovering from being sick, so I'm like
Yeah.
starting the NyQuil now.
Yeah, well, Tucker though, like he's been labeled a traitor. Like it's a huge like national scandal, basically. Well, for us, it's not a scandal, of course.
Yeah.
But for the normies, for people who vote Democrat, basically, it's a scandal. They don't know why, but yeah, they just say, "Oh, how dare you interview Putin?" Let's forget about Megyn Kelly. Let's forget about Charlie Rose. Let's forget about Barbara Walters, right? Let's forget about all these journalists who interviewed Putin.
Yep. Heaven forbid, someone talk with the big bad guy and actually get his take on things.
This interview, it's different than any interview with Zelensky. If you noticed how the mainstream media, like they're always kind of like cozying up to Zelensky. And they're always
absolutely.
praising him. They're always like praising him. So, Mr. Zelensky, you're so wonderful. Oh, like you're so personable, right? Okay.
I had a friend who was like, "Oh, I think Zelensky should get Man of the Year." I was like, "What? Okay, what has he actually done?"
Maybe Soy Man of the Year.
Yeah, what is it? Has he actually done anything? No, he just goes, "Moshi Biden, I need 500 katana to kill Nanking children." Like, that's all he does.
Well, I saw an interview with Zelensky, like a little clip this morning, and so basically Zelensky, he was asked, so in the mornings, what do you do? Like, do you walk around in the mornings? Do you read books? Do you enjoy the nice, quiet atmosphere in the mornings? And Zelensky's like, oh yes, yes I do. Every morning I like to have relaxation, to do my things, listen to music. And I'm thinking, and you forgot to mention snorting the certain white powder. And it's not a joke. Like, I'm not trying to be funny here. Literally, Zelensky, before he was president ever, he said during an interview that he does Coca-Cola in the mornings. Right? So, like, no. And here's the thing.
Is that a verboten word on YouTube?
I'm just trying to be careful, you know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We're not going to say cocainum.
Cocainum.
Dude, I saw that movie. It was terrible.
It's only, you know, it's only good just for laughs, but like storyline and plot line, it's just stupid.
It's totally one of those like grab a beer, you will need some popcorn.
Just watch and laugh. Just watch and laugh at the whole movie. Just yeah. So anyway. Yeah. So anyways, like, so I remember Zelensky said that, like, he gets up in the mornings and does Coca-Cola. The first thing he does is Coca-Cola, walks the dog, he has energy to do all that stuff, and then he has energy all day, right? And I'm thinking now he's president, and he's looking at this woman, and they're walking around, and she's asking him, so, yeah, what do you do on quiet mornings like these? Like, do you enjoy and relax? He goes, yes, I enjoy relaxation, and he just, I'm thinking, dude, like, he almost mentioned the Coca-Cola. He almost mentioned doing the Coca-Cola in the morning.
What a fellow. I'm not gonna say the words. What a guy.
What a guy.
What a guy.
Oh, what a nice guy.
You're gonna call him beautiful Zelensky. I'm still mad at that Donald. How dare you?
How dare you?
Stolen everything from me.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I really enjoyed the interview. It was done quite well, and yeah.
Well, like, I wish the interview was longer. Near the end, it felt a little bit weaker too. If you notice how, like, you have like these like tougher questions, and like these big, longer, more sophisticated answers.
Yeah,
and then towards the end, it kind of towards the end, like, I'd say the last 20 minutes, it just kind of like started to kind of wane a bit. I'm thinking, I wish this interview was 3 hours long, so that there could be more questions and the conversation and the dialogue could be longer. Yeah.
Tucker ended very weak with his like, "Are you gonna free this journalist? It would make you look like a better man." Well,
that was kind of more like towards, like, I don't know, like the last 8 minutes, 10 minutes.
Yeah. And Putin was just like, no.
Well, he not like directly saying no. He said, like, hey, this is something the special services do. Well, yeah. I think that what the translator meant to say was the secret services.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he mentioned how, like, if he was shown a modicum of respect, and they. Because most people don't get geopolitics as a give and take. It's a pull. You know, you pull, they let go. They pull, you let go kind of thing. Which is an alien concept to Americans who get everything they want. But he explained, like, if people gave me a little bit of slack, then yes, I would release him.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. What kind of justice would a Russian so-called journalist get here in the States if he did the same thing?
He'd be thrown in. I can actually make this joke. He would be thrown into the gulag with the January Sixers. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, here's the thing. What's interesting is that, like, Russian journalists would not even dare ask that question. Be like, okay, yeah, he violated the laws of this country, so, you know, and Yeah, and plus, Putin did tell Tucker, "Hey, let the secret services like they communicate with each other all the time. They make deals with each other, right?
Yeah.
It's like going back to that false this false idea that Putin is just single-handedly running the country by himself.
Hmm.
And Putin said like there's secret services like they communicate with each other all the time. Like let them do their work, right? Like what do I have to do with this? You know?
He did also
Yeah.
mention, wrapping up, he did also mention how the deep state. I don't think this is like really a controversial thing to say because Putin mentioned it a good hour of the interview. He mentioned deep state power in the United States and how presidents are kind of beholden to it. He was referring to how Bush was beholden. Bush and Clinton, I believe, were beholden to deep state power.
Okay.
That was
Yeah,
the.
yeah, because he mentioned that Bush he's actually not as dumb as you think.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And how they presented Bush as like some dumb country boy, but is actually quite an intelligent guy. But he was restricted in ability to exert power by certain agencies. I believe that was the word he used. So I don't think it's particularly spicy to to say when it's in relation to the interview, and the interviewee said specifically that. But that, yeah. Other than that, I think we covered the whole interview.
Yeah, yeah. Like I just wish it was longer.
I do
Yeah.
too. Yeah. I hope they can maybe get another one, but it doesn't sound like they're going to do another one. Putin's a very busy man. I understand that. And taking like 5 hours just to do an interview.
Well, here's the thing. There is a post interview clip. Let me find it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So okay, right here after the Vladimir Putin interview. So oh, of course, I cannot see it because I'm not a team member. I'm not a paid subscriber to the Tucker Carlson network. So yeah, I'll
Oh.
subscribe later, or maybe I'll wait for it to
Yeah,
come out.
I'll look into it. Yeah, I'll look into it and we can do another video about it
Yeah.
tomorrow or the
So,
day.
but it looks like did he get a Apple laptop from Putin? Like I don't know what that is. Like, or maybe he just like, or maybe he's getting his iPad ready. I don't know. Uh, Yeah, like that'd be so funny if Putin gives him a gift and it's just some basic Apple product.
Here's iPhone. You use for things.
He had a special iPhone, you know. Also, apparently, Elon Musk is in hot water right now because apparently Russia used Starlink in Ukraine.
Oh yeah, that
Yeah.
and Musk. So I don't know if this is the current thing you're talking about, but I do know that Musk was refusing to like pick sides in the Russia-Ukraine war, and how there were a lot of people that were like, "No, you need to let the Ukrainians use Starlink," and he was like, I choose neither," and that pissed a lot of people off.
Yeah, well, like he said, like and they wanted to use his stuff for war. He goes, hold on, that's not what it's for. It's for civilians to use. Like
Mm-hmm.
basically, yeah, and I think he was angry that they also wanted to like use it without his permission. And honestly,
Mm-hmm.
what the Ukrainians were doing, it was basically provoking an actual like third world war right there on the spot. And
Oh yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
and Musk was like saying, okay, like I'm not gonna be the guy responsible for this, right? Yeah, so yeah, because he blocked Starlink, right? Or he did not give Ukraine access to Starlink in Crimea, if I remember, that's what it was.
Mm-hmm. Oh, before I wrap up, sorry, the I'm not gonna say the brand name. It's because I'm sure we'll get whacked on the head for. But the cold and flu medicine is starting to hit, so I'm going to start wrapping up. Get some sleep. Did you see that the first M1A1 Abrams have hit the field in Avdiivka?
Yeah, like basically, I've heard about that, and so I don't think it's a big deal, to be honest.
Yeah. It's going to get blown up by a Hornet missile in like 45 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, like I heard about that, and I'm thinking, okay, Avdiivka's literally going to fall probably within a couple of days now. And this is not some empty projection. This is like basically probably a fact because Russian troops, they were in the suburbs, in the southern suburbs of Avdiivka, like literally I think a couple weeks ago. Yeah, and so what's interesting is that like Putin. By the way, we forgot to mention how Putin talks about Kiev several times, and Boris Johnson, right? Boris Johnson telling the Ukrainians, "Don't you dare sign the peace agreement with Russia. We will support you all the way." Right. So continue this war. And so one thing I don't know if it was Putin or I don't know if it was just the translator, because he kept saying Kiev. I'm thinking, well, not really Kiev. It was the Kiev region, the Kiev Oblast. It's like saying like Los Angeles County. So Los Angeles County does not necessarily mean you're in Los Angeles. You're just in their county.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so like the Russian troops, they were actually in the Kiev region. They're not in the city of Kiev itself. And basically, okay, sorry guys, that was Tucker speaking. I had to mute him. So basically, what was I talking about? Yeah, Kiev. Yeah, so Russian troops, they were in Kiev, outnumbered, by the way, in 2022 by the Ukrainian troops, and they're still losing. The Ukrainians were still losing, and there are lots of videos, not on mainstream media, but lots of videos of Ukrainian troops just surrendering to like outnumbered Russian troops in the Kiev region of all places. And I think like the furthest, like the closest to Kiev, like some small units were probably I think about 30 minutes away if you drive a car. So yeah, but like like the Russians withdrew because they just want to just show the Ukrainian side, hey, we're interested in peaceful conversations. So you signed the peace agreement, we withdraw. And then Boris Johnson just flies in. Oh, no peace agreements. Oh, continue the war. We will support you. We will support you, mate. We will support you in a bloody war with Russia. Then you'll join NATO. Like, was that a good impression?
That was a good Churchill, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that was a Churchill. I sound like Churchill.
Well, Boris Johnson, Churchill, same guy.
Yes, yeah.
Awful. Trying to destroy Europe.
Basically, Angloids. Yeah.
Yes, Angloids. The ever untrustworthy.
The eternal Angloid. Yeah.
Hey, buddy, I am going to sign off. I am.
All right, guys. So tonight we did not have any super chats. I mean, I wish we did have some super chats, but the link to the Streamlabs, if you guys just want to help donate to our channel, it's right there in the description. So just go to the hit the more tab on your computer or on your phone. Click on that, hit that, and just go to Streamlabs. Send in a donation. And so like I'm probably if you send a super chat like right now, it's going to be too late because I myself I'm going to sign out. So any last words?
Read it next stream.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, yes, probably. Hopefully next stream. But so not a spy. Any last words, or are you just out right now?
Floss. Remember to floss and sleep.
Okay. Very important, guys. Floss.
Sir, I'm exhausted. That's all I.
So, anyways, so like, share, subscribe. Also, go to our other videos. We have the link to the merch channels. So buy the merch and support our channel. Or go to Streamlabs as I mentioned, and donate over there. And yeah, that's all I gotta say. And I wish you guys a